This is John Young with the Disc Jockey News and Disc Jockey News TV, and tonight I've got a couple of special guests for us. We have got Mitch Taylor. Good evening, Mitch.
Good evening, John. How are you?
Wonderful, wonderful. And on the other side, we have got Ruth. Good evening, Ron.
John, how are you?
Wonderful, wonderful. Guys, I'm excited to have you here tonight.
I couldn't be more happy myself.
Yeah. We've got
Glad to be here.
Yeah, we've got... We had some questions coming in about client meetings when it comes to selling weddings. Mm-hmm. And when my first thought is I knew that we've got some very talented writers who are exceptional in that wedding area and do a lot of sales. And I threw the net out, and who would we catch but Mitch and Ron? Yay!
Yay!
Or wait a sec. I was going to say, that must have been an interesting net.
Yeah, we're the only two people that don't have a regular life, so...
Well, that makes, I guess, three of us. We'll just call it. Oh, good stuff, good stuff. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to talk a little bit about some pre-sales. When you get that person who wants the information or wants to find out more about you. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Then once a person has booked your services, we're going to talk a little bit about what some of the meetings look like after that. So,
okay,
guys, let's just jump right in. So you get a telephone call or you get an email. For my personal stand, I get a lot of emails. And I got one last night from a bride, so basically saying, "Hey, we're getting married such and such a date. What are your rates? What are your packages? What is your first? What do you guys do in that?" And Mitch, I'll start with you. What would you do in a situation? Because obviously we want to get to a meeting. What are some of your tactics, or what are your couple of ideas to make that transition?
The very first thing I ask a bride when I get the email or get the phone call in regards to, am I available for their date? What are your rates? Is, how did you hear about us? To me, that helps create the warm fuzzy in regards to knowing where they're at in the process. And also, how much they know about our company is also one of the first questions I ask. Because this helps me determine where they're at in the process, how much they know, and how else I could better serve them.
Nice. Now, Ron, when you get that type of a call, how do you work that? Because obviously you're a very big proponent of that face-to-face meeting.
Right.
Once you've established maybe that they have seen you before, I mean, is it a difference between if they've seen you and not seen you to set up the meeting, or what have you found to work for you?
Well, I mean, it's always to your advantage if they've seen you perform, because that in and of itself helps with the sales process, but it's not imperative that they've seen me in the past. I do much like what Mitch just said. I first thing I want to know is how did they learn about me, so I know where they're coming from, and also to know how my marketing dollars are working.
Sure.
But one of the first things I try to do is get them into a consultation. Is just go immediately to, would you like to get together? Or I have these dates available. What do you think about getting together on one of these days? What's most convenient for you, so we can talk about your wedding in greater detail.
Nice. I like that aspect where you can. I've got Tuesday at 4:00 or Wednesday at noon,
right.
kind of a thing.
Right, and you don't want to. And I learned a long time ago, you don't want to leave that date open. You want to offer specific dates to them, so that they have something that they can shoot for, rather than just being, okay, when would it be most convenient? So, from the phone call, how quickly do you want to try to set up that meeting? Is this something you want to try to do within a day or two, or a week out? What becomes too far out? Well, for me, I mean, I want to try to get them into the meeting as soon as possible, but that's not always. Whether it's that week or not just depends on what other appointments I already have set up. So sometimes I may have to say, I can meet with you. If they email me on a Tuesday, for example, I may have to say my first availability is on Monday of next week.
Sure.
Or Tuesday, just simply because the schedules, most likely most couples that are going to contact us are people that work during the day. So their only availabilities are during the evening, and your evening appointment time is usually, going to be fairly limited to 2 or 3 hours. So the most you can meet with is maybe 2 clients in an evening, but it just depends.
Yeah. Now, Mitch, you're covering a little bit larger geographic area. Now, how does that affect your setting up meetings and your timing with setting up a meeting after the initial contact?
Well, for me, I like Ron, want to set it up right away as soon as possible. You want to capitalize upon that energy that they have, and they've seen you. I think the longer you wait that out, the more likelihood they are to shop around, book somebody else. So I want to capitalize upon that positive energy they got with our company and how we can get them to a meeting as soon as possible. That being said, we don't always have that opportunity, just as Ron stated. But from our standpoint, covering a bigger geographic area, it really depends on where they're at. If I need to do a Skype meeting with them, we'll do that. If I need to do a lengthy phone call to make that happen instead of actually meeting in person, we'll do that.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes I'll Facebook friend the bride ahead of time, and we'll share video links on Facebook Instant Messenger at the same time, or Skype Instant Messenger. However way we're doing the call, we'll make it happen.
That's a great point. Let's. This is going to kind of be a little bit of a divergent. Social media. What forms of social media are you finding that some brides are connecting with you through?
I find brides connect with me through Facebook and YouTube primarily. For me, Facebook is really big. I always encourage you to look at your analytics and look at your Facebook statistics as well, your insights, and see what's benefiting your company the best. Are people going to your Facebook page? Look at your insights. Are people using your Facebook page first, then going to your website? Are they using your website first, then going to your Facebook? You want to maximize your marketing efforts, and yes, it might be dollars in regards to Facebook advertising and web advertising, or it might just be your time invested. And regardless if it's time or money, you want to maximize that medium.
Sure. Ron, have you found any kind of trends with people contacting you through any of the social media channels?
No, I don't get that much contact through like Facebook or any of them. But one of the things I do use Facebook as for research prior to a meeting with a couple. If I have their first and last name, I'll go to their Facebook page and take a look. I'm not trying to stalk them. I'm just trying to get a feel for what their personality and style might be like. If they're extremely fun-loving, or if they're more subdued, or those sort of things. It helps, and it also makes it easier, especially if I'm meeting the client off property. I know what they look like.
Certainly.
Rather than sitting there going, I wonder who they are.
You have any examples now, finding information, like helpful information that you've been able to use at a meeting that you found on Facebook, Ron? Is there anything that stands out that was really...
my purpose isn't really to go too in depth. I think that would be a little creepy.
Mm-hmm.
It might be really uncomfortable for the client if I were to start quoting stuff from her Facebook page. but again, you can kind of tell from how people post and their photos and such. What you can get a little bit of an edge knowing what their personality is going to be like, and so that kind of helps you set the tone for how the consultation is going to go.
Mm-hmm.
Makes it a little easier if you know that they're fun-loving to come in and be a little bit more high energy. If you know that they're a bit more subdued, maybe starting out a little bit on a lower level of energy and then building from there.
Sure. We in some of the seminars we've been to, and I think we've had conversations in the hall with the both of you a little bit about personality profiling a bit, being able to sell to the type of personality or matching or connecting with that type of, if they're more of a dominant, if they're more of a passive, what have you. Can a person find that type of information, do you think, with the Facebook page as an example, with that? Or is it not something that's going to come through in a true enough form to use in that sales meeting?
I think it completely depends on if they have a dominant personality or not. For example, if they're a strong A personality, that very well may come out. But if they're more middle, let's say they're 60B and 40C, if you will, then you're probably not going to get that out of a Facebook page. So it depends on how strong they are in one of the quadrants, whether you know or not what you got before they walk in the door.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay, so we've talked a little bit about getting a setup. Now let's look at the where to meet. Some DJs have office, some don't. Mitch, you've done both. Let's start with you. What is your feeling when it comes to meeting face to face? Where, what? Kind of walk us through that.
If at all possible, if a client lives within an hour radius or a half hour radius at least of my office, we're going to meet at my office. I have, it's more comfortable for me. I'm able to have everything I need to be able to showcase them and how we can help them on their wedding day. If we are traveling, for example, I have a wedding coming up. The bride and groom, it's for 2015, actually. They just booked us, but they live in Cleveland.
Oh, my.
And ironically enough, I'm actually traveling to Cleveland this summer, so I'm going to be meeting with them while I'm in Cleveland to make it happen. Now, obviously, you can't always make that work, but in that scenario, then I'm going to get to a Starbucks or a Panera Bread or whatever the case may be. I'm going to choose a time that's not a very busy time typically. Let's say a 2 to 4 p.m. or 9 to 11 a.m., something around those time frames there. I'm going to get to the space at least 15 minutes minimum prior to our actual meeting, so that we can find a table that's going to be good for us, a good location, talk to the server ahead of time, make sure we're on a first name basis, let them know I'll be picking up the check, those kind of details.
Sure, sure. Ron, yourself now, as far as when you're doing your meetings, where's a spot there, or what have you experienced with that?
Well, with the sales consultation, I office at home, so my philosophy is just a little different. I try whenever possible to go to my client's side of town. I may not I usually don't meet them in their home. I used to meet at Starbucks, but I can't do that anymore. It's just, to me, it's just too loud and distracting. Also, Starbucks are small. Sometimes you're struggling with trying to find a place to sit down. Panera Bread is sometimes a great spot, but more recently than not, I've been meeting with the clients. If depending on where they live, I'll either meet with them at the venue, or I may know of a hotel or something close to them where we can meet in the lobby. So many of the lobbies of hotels now have gotten to be social, so they have lots of chairs and tables and places where you can sit down and chat. And I find that that's usually quieter and less distracting.
Now, you mentioned the venue, and that was one of the questions I wanted to ask. This just for the sales, the pre-sale? Would you meet at the venue and do a walk through the space? Is that something?
Oh, absolutely. If especially if it's a venue. I just met with a couple last week for Union Station here in Kansas City, which is a massive space and with tremendous amount of acoustic challenges and multi-rooms, and it was much easier to meet them there because as I'm talking to them about some of the challenges, I'm actually able to walk them through it and how we can overcome those challenges. So they could actually see, feel, and touch what I was talking about.
Nice.
Completely agree with Ron on this. Anytime in the sales process and the initial consultation with them, you're painting the picture for the client. So if you can paint that picture in that space with them, in their space,
yeah,
it's a win-win for you and a win-win for them because they're better able to visualize it of how their event will go down with you at the helm of their party, which is what you want.
Sure. Now, to add on to this, catering manager, they're working with a on-site catering person, or if they haven't signed a contract, but they've got a contact there. Would you include them in this part of the conversation, or is this something you don't want to really include anyone else besides you and the couple?
Go ahead, Mitch.
I think for me, it depends on my relationship with that catering manager. If it's and I've done it both ways.
Okay.
If it's a catering manager that I've worked with on a regular basis, she refers me all the time, absolutely, because that's only going to help your cause in getting that sale. If it's a catering manager that I'm meeting for the first time, I have done it in the initial consultation. It's a little different vibe then at that point because you don't know her boundaries. At that point, I probably would recommend if you could at all visit the catering manager ahead of time before that consultation with them, maybe have a chat over lunch or over coffee or something with her, bring her some business cards and chat with her about her business and see maybe how you can help each other before you actually get to that step with the clients present.
Sure. Ron, have you had some of the catering managers involved with some of your meetings? Not in
the initial sales consultation. No, that would make me really nervous. But and I want the focus to be specifically on the client throughout that entire conversation that I'm having with them. I don't necessarily want someone interjecting. I'm not saying that I wouldn't be open to it if the situation called for it, but no. The short answer to your question, John, is no.
So with the and let's just continue with this. When a person has a catering manager in some of the early discussions, have you guys found their input of this is how we do it here to be an impediment to the conversation?
Yes.
Or okay, that's what I was wondering if you guys have noticed that also, because I've had that feeling and I just didn't know if it was me or.
That is, it's a. Now, are you talking about the sales consultation, or are you talking later down the road?
Early in the process, whether it's even in the sales, because I have had some experience with meeting with a couple, and it was as we're walking the space that, well, this is where we do this is how we do this is where we put this, and I was just wondering if you guys have experienced that also.
I think that before I would do that with the client, I would want to do it alone with that individual to find out. I'd want to know in advance, so I'm like a bride. I hate surprises. I absolutely hate surprises.
Yeah.
So I'd much rather know, have that meeting with the catering manager in advance, so we could discuss those. This is the way we always do it, kind of things. If they impede with what I need to do or interfere with what I need to do. But I do that with couples further down the road in the planning process. But again, I already know what the catering manager or the venue manager is going to say at that point.
Sure.
It completely depends on the relationship. If you've got a solid relationship already with that venue, they refer you, they love you. I don't see any reason not to have it with them in the space, or at least part of the meeting with them in the space. Maybe not all of it. I would concur with Ron on that. From that standpoint of, sometimes it can be an impedance at that point. But if you are, have a solid relationship with that bride and groom and with that catering manager, that venue manager, then use it to your advantage if you can.
Yeah. Nice. Okay, let's move on. We're about halfway through our time that I wanted to have for us tonight. Let's move on now. So we've done the sales. Now we're getting into the planning process. So let's say we have about a 12-month period between our booking and the event.
Right.
Ron, during that time frame, how often would you prefer? I mean, in an ideal situation, how often would you like to be meeting and planning with the couple? And kind of just give us a little overview of what your planning process would be in that time frame.
Well, for me, if I have a year, then one of the things I do is I try like at least every 45 days just to check in with the couple after they book me, just to say, hey, just a reminder, I'm here. Is there anything I can help you with today? But for me, the planning process actually begins 3 months out from their event. That's our first meeting.
Okay.
Then we meet again 2 months out, 1 month out, and then of course, if they want to meet more, I'm happy to do it. But I'll meet with them. I usually meet with the wedding party at rehearsal. Go over the events of the day with them so they know what's going to be going on, and that's another time to meet with the client, but that's not really a formal meeting. But I try really hard to be out of their hair no later than 30 days prior to their event, so they know that part of everything is done. Unless it's just totally not possible, which is rare, but sometimes it happens.
Yeah. Mitch, do you use a similar? I mean, I know a lot of you set up some things where you've got some automation involved with the process. What's a 12-month period before an event look like for Mitch?
Okay, so for a 12-month period for tailored weddings, we basically are touching base with them every 30 days, pretty much around the same time frame that Ron said. It's more of an email communication with us. We give them a checklist, a monthly checklist every month of what things they might be wanting to look at and do. A lot of brides say they love getting that checklist, because that kind of keeps them on track, especially those that are procrastinators, if you will. I totally agree with Ron on the statement of I want to be done with them 30 days prior so that we can have nothing more left. They're not pulling their hair out. To me, one of the biggest mistakes that a lot of DJs make is waiting until the week before or 2 weeks before the wedding and calling the bride and saying, hey, I need your songs and I need your bridal party names. And she's going crazy with people coming to town, last minute things that week prior, and you shouldn't put that kind of stress on her, in my opinion. We typically meet with our brides and grooms about 6 to 4 months prior to the wedding day, because we are a little more We offer a lot of production for our clients as well, whether it be montage creation or audio, video edits, custom edits that we do for our clients too. So to me, I want to have a lot of that ball rolling and kind of get that process started earlier. That helps me in regards to laying out our summer and laying out our weeks of production ahead of time. And then we have our final planning meeting typically about 2 months prior to the wedding day to go over their timeline, to confirm details. And then, if there's any last minute changes, we can have a final planning meeting if the bride wants, 4 months or 4 weeks prior or 3 weeks prior to the wedding day.
Nice.
And I think, and I think part of the, not just waiting until 2 weeks out is not a good idea. What's happening through the process for Mitch and for me both, because of the amount of time that we're allowing for the planning process, through that we're also able to develop a tremendous relationship with the client, which is extraordinarily important, exceptionally important, because it puts them at ease. They trust you now. When you get to the wedding, if all you've done is just kind of done that 2 week thing out, there's really no trust. There's no relationship at all, and so you spend the entire evening with the bride questioning your decisions rather than coming and just having a great time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
totally agree.
Good.
I tell all of our couples that we have 2 goals for every wedding we help you with. Number 1, I want the 2 of you and your parents to feel like guests at your own wedding reception.
Absolutely.
And number 2, I want your guests to leave saying, "Wow, that wedding was so them. We had so much fun." Those are our goals for every couple we work with.
It's interesting. Mitch, I want to hit that. You want them to feel like a guest at a wedding, or they're a guest their own. What are you paralleling that with, or contrasting that to? I'm
not sure your question, John.
You're contrasting. So if you instead of them being a guest, if they wouldn't be a guest at their wedding, are you using that to describe not wanting them to have to worry and work at their own wedding? Is that okay?
Yes, that's exactly it. And not to get too deep or anything, but I think, if a bride hires a DJ, all he's doing most cases, or a lot of cases, is showing up, playing music, and making announcements. And that announcement is not, ensuring a smooth flow for the event. That's literally just announcing it's time for the cake cutting. It's time for the father-daughter dance. And without any sort of coordination behind the scenes to ensure that all the players are there and the stage is set for the moment to happen. And from that standpoint, we talk about that in our sales consultation as well, in regards to the flow of the event, how they want it to happen, why they should be looking at a master of ceremonies, or should they be looking at a DJ, or what their priority is, and then let's help them find that entity to fit their priority.
Sure. Great stuff. Okay, so if we're say we're meeting, we've got our meeting set up. The final now. Again, we've done our sales. Let's go through and look again. Location. Where would you be? Maybe let's go with a initial planning and a final planning. Where would you tend to meet for those two? Ron, you want to take that one?
Yeah. Well, the first consultation that I have with the client is nothing more than 90 minutes of getting to know you, and it's usually done in my office. And that getting to know you, it's like an interview process. I want to know everything I can possibly know about the client, simply because that way I can offer them more in the way of personal touches and creative ideas. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, I use that process also for getting them recorded on hard drives. So the way I do love stories, I need their voices. So that's first meeting. Second meeting, again, is usually in my office. That's the planning meeting. And we usually, I try to have fun with the planning meeting. We have planning and pizza, because nothing goes better with planning than pizza. And then third meeting is actually to go to the venue and do a walkthrough, usually with the catering manager. Sometimes I'll invite the photographer. It just depends. Mm-hmm. And at the end of that walkthrough, then we sit down and we wrap up whatever loose ends they may still have. And again, like Mitch said, I tell my clients, that doesn't mean that we're not going to communicate in that last 30 days. It just means I want you to be able to enjoy that last 30 days knowing that it's taken care of. Everything that you need to worry about with me is done. But if you have questions, or if you need anything, we can still email, we can still call. And actually, if they want another meeting, I'm happy to do that as well. So Nice.
Mitch, your planning meetings,
Yeah.
How do you guys handle those?
I like Ron's idea of getting to know the client on that first planning meeting. We do something similar. A lot of my consultations are actually, some of my consultations before they book us can last normally a solid hour and sometimes an hour and a half. So I feel like I do a lot of getting to know them in that initial process too. I want to feel them out and make sure they're a right fit for us too. So let me fast forward now to the planning process. The first planning meeting, I have them fill out some of our online planning forms that we use with DJ Event Planner. And from there, what we do is we walk them through that online planning form that they filled out and kind of build, for lack of a better, fancier term, a more lovey term, is a skeleton of their wedding day, of how it's going to flow.
Sure.
And then, but in that same process, I'm also getting to know them and asking them, how do you want your father-daughter moment to feel? That's we get to that part of things too, and each moment, kind of finding out the importance of that moment to them, or if it's not. Some couples, the cake cutting is not important to them at all. Others, it's very important. Or maybe it's the blessing. I had one recently, about a year and a half ago, where the blessing was very important to the groom because his grandmother, the matriarch of the family, always said grace at every single family function. Mm-hmm. So we find out the importance of each moment to them, and then we structure a timeline around it to fit, to make sure that is highlighted.
Nice. Now, when you're meeting with the couples and doing those things, Mitch, are you meeting at your office then, or do you make sure?
In most cases, yes.
Okay.
In most cases, yes. But again, it depends on who the client is and the scenario, the situation with them. When you made that first statement to Ron, John, it reminded me of a final planning meeting I had with the bride and groom, and they lived in Lower Michigan, kind of heading towards Metro Detroit, about 2 hours north of Detroit. Mm-hmm. And I happened to be traveling down there to speak at a ADJA function. And I met the bride and groom. We did a final planning meeting inside of an Applebee's. And then we had to do custom recordings for them. So we did the custom recordings literally in my car.
I've done that. I did that. I've done that before. That's kind of fun.
It is. It's kind of fun.
I believe the acoustics inside a car aren't that bad. Yes,
they're not that bad. But then you've got the bride in the backseat of your car, and the groom is like, "What are you doing?" No.
Oh, this could get ugly. We better move on from this.
I'll stop right there.
Well, the hard part is if it's like an extremely warm day, you've got... I did this once with the father of the bride. The only way I could get his recordings for the father-daughter dance was he was a construction worker, so I had to go to his site. Mm-hmm. And first of all, the ambient noise outside, we had to roll up the windows, and it was like 90 degrees outside. And I said, talk fast.
That's awesome.
Sweat pouring down.
Yeah.
Good thing it's not video.
Yeah.
Cool. Some of the topics that when you're going through, there are some things that you guys want to make sure you're hitting at these planning sessions. That might be something that a person would overlook. And I don't want to get into too but. One of the things, when I've been doing some pre-planning, I want to find out quite a bit about the ceremony as an area that a typical DJ probably wouldn't. Are there some areas kind of that you guys have found that would be outside the DJ realm but can really make a difference when you're planning and coordinating the event?
I think the ceremony is a very big deal, John, and I'm glad you brought that up. To me, I want to know what time their ceremony is, and then I'll kind of lay that out for them in regards to, are you having a receiving line? What time do you have to be out of the church by? How many guests are coming from out of town? Where are they staying? These are all questions that will help us structure, a start and an end time of a wedding reception. And even from a standpoint, and I'm sure it's different regionally everywhere. Obviously, East Coast weddings that Mike Walter does are completely different than what we do in the Midwest versus what happens on the West Coast. But I'll ask questions like, when you're setting out your invitation, and a lot of times I'm catching my brides before they send the invitation, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
I'll state, have you thought about how you want to word it? And they may say, oh, we're going to do, reception starting at this, cocktails at this, dinner at this, dancing at this. And I'll explain to them that might not be a good idea. Do you want your guests to see everything that happens at your wedding reception. Because if you put a start time of cocktails at 5, dinner at 6, dancing at 8, then some of your guests may literally show up at 5:45 and may miss the introductions or may miss the cake cutting. So my recommendation normally is reception starting at 5 with dinner and dance to follow, or reception starting at whatever time it is. So this way everyone will be there and want to be a part of the day with the bride and groom. Will avoid some of the late stragglers in showing up.
Sure.
And I think to add to what Mitch said, it kind of takes us back to the sales presentation. Is that, in a sales presentation, I think one of the things that needs to come across is that we know what we're doing, and so when you make these suggestions later in the planning process, I mean, one of the reasons they contracted you in the first place is because, again, they trust you and they respect whatever expertise you may have. So it makes it far easier for someone like Mitch or I or anybody else that spends a lot of time with their clients to be able to say, you may that might not be the best route to go. And they're going to be more open to other ideas rather than just kind of going, well, only thing you know about us is our phone number. So.
Yeah.
And that's a great point. I tell my couples all the time, I said, I'll paint the picture for you of how it might flow if you put your cake cutting before or after dinner.
Right.
And let me lay this out for you and let you know how it will flow based upon, the hundreds of weddings I've performed for couples for. And then it's kind of like choose your own adventure, Pick which one you want.
Yeah.
And they like that. They like to be able to see that ahead of time.
Well, and I think, in the sale, again, going back to the sales process, just so much of this, as far as you can paint all sorts of pictures during the sales process, and actually, if you can tell a story during the sales process of what the bride and groom can expect, if you can share about maybe other couples you've worked with in the same venue, or maybe that have similar personalities or some similarities, again, it comes down to that relationship, so that it just makes it easier throughout the process.
A good point. When you guys are talking a lot about the communication with the bride and groom. Questioning, of course, us asking questions. I mean, do you have I hate to call it a rule of thumb, but, obviously you hear the thing, the 2 ears and 1 mouth when it comes to sales. Do you have a guideline that you're going to ask this many questions, or you want to go through this kind of material, or how do you handle to make sure that you're asking enough questions to draw them out, but yet still being able to have some input? How do you balance that?
Who do you want to go to?
Mitch, let's start with Mitch. Go ahead. Sorry.
It doesn't matter. I can go or Ron can go. Doesn't matter. For me, it's really just a natural flowing conversation. And to me, there's no real set number of questions. When I did creative consultations at Mobile Beat and presenting it now at Midwest DJs Live, I have that top 40, creative consultations questionnaire thing. But I tell DJs all the time, do not use this as a rattle it off, list of questions you're going to ask every single client, and just, that's not how this should be. It should be a natural flowing conversation. And then if you have that checklist, only use it if you get stuck with what to ask next. The best question to always ask next, if you get stuck, is why. Thank you, Bill Herman, for that. But that to me is always the best question to ask next. And to me, sales is always, it's the natural flowing conversation between you and the bride and groom, or the parents, or whoever's in the room with you. And really, the close is when all their questions are answered, and the only logical solution for them then is to choose you, because you painted yourself as the right option for them.
Now, Ron, when you're doing your consultations and things, one of the things I was reading on page 6 of the Disc Jockey News,
yes,
was you're talking about your improv training that you've been taking, and how that's been helping that process. So, how do you handle the flow of questioning to giving advice, and how does that improv fit into that?
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned that page 6 in Disc Jockey News, because since Mitch got to pitch his upcoming presentation coming up, Well, even before improv, I mean, I'm like Mitch. I want it to be a free flowing idea, but I think what can happen to a lot of people, I know it happened to me. You just, over a period of time, what you think is nothing more than a casual conversation has really become something that is far more scripted than what you think it is, just because you've done it so many times. Yes, there are certain points, as I wrote in my article on page 6, there are bullet points I want to cover, but that I want to make sure I cover, but I'm not just going to make those, boom, 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 boom. I try to incorporate the conversation. But I think what improv has taught me is that listening is far more important. Unless you're showing page 6. I am. It's really distracting. There you go.
There, I wanted to show it. So
does it Mitch write with this paper too?
Yeah, he's somewhere in there, but it's not page 6.
I thought it was like maybe in the comic section or something. I don't know.
Okay. So,
but again, I think one of the things I learned through improv is that the skill of relearning, the skill of listening. You have to listen in improv to what the person is saying to you, so you know how to respond to it, and you cannot just assume they're going to say this as it would be in a script. You have to actually listen so you know how to respond to that. And so over the past couple of client meetings I've had, it's been a far different experience for me than it has been in a long time. I've enjoyed these meetings so much, and have been able to close more sales just from listening and being able to respond to what the client is saying to me, rather than just in my mind just moving on to the next question.
Are you finding that you're asking more clarification questions afterwards, or just being able to contour your answer to that specific question of theirs?
I'm finding that I'm able to build on whatever they're telling me.
Okay.
So, if they say to me that they want to do, something, and then whatever it may be, just recently had a couple, they were talking about, it's a multi-room venue, and we were talking about having to move people from one room to the other. We need to you would want to find a fun way to do that, was what I came up with. And I said, maybe just off the top of my head, doing something like the samba or Barry Manilow. And at that moment, the lady said, well, my aunt's favorite favorite artist is Barry Manilow. And I said, well, then, hey, let's get your aunt to help with this and do something to maybe Copacabana or whatever. Yeah. I mean, it was all in a sales process, and it was a lot of throwing around of ideas that hadn't really been thought through very well. But that happens later in the process. But to be able to at least brainstorm, so building on ideas, I think is as important as just listening to their ideas and then saying, yeah, that's nice, and then here's my next question, or here's my next thing, or whatever.
I would totally agree with Ron on that. I learned a long time ago, and I forget what workshop or training I took with that. Too many people listen to respond versus listening to understanding what they need, then coming up together or coming up yourself with a response to that understanding of what you heard.
I gotcha.
I think Ron would agree with that, yes?
Yeah. And if I'm not interrupting, Mitch, I think, that's, again, one of the most important parts of a sales process, to me anyway, is that first 15, 20 minutes is doing nothing more than getting to know who the couple is. Yeah. And getting to know them. I don't even want to talk about me until I know as much as I can in a short period of time. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to go too in depth, but just the basics of these individuals, how they met, where they met, all the way up through maybe the engagement. But I think part of it too is one of the things that I'm learning is never be afraid to offer. Don't be afraid to step across a line. I'm using the wrong words here, John. I'm sorry. What I'm saying is don't be afraid to be imaginative. That's what I would say. There's nothing wrong with that. If you're brainstorming ideas, throw ideas out there. The point is that you're brainstorming ideas and you're showing that you have a creative side.
I completely agree with Ron on that. Again, something from Bill Herman, but to me, a wedding reception, I'll show this to a bride and groom. Your wedding reception is a blank piece of paper.
Absolutely.
How do you want to create it? You're only limited by your imagination and sometimes your budget.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little different with Ron. I know that has been bandied about quite a bit in regards to, start the first 15 minutes of your sales consultation talking, nothing about you, all about them.
Mm-hmm.
I've kind of done a little bit of a 180 on that because, again, I want to know how much they know about our company as well, so that I can kind of fill in the blanks and help them in maybe other ways, such as maybe they need a minister for their wedding day, for their ceremony outside. Sure. So I'll spend normally the first, 5 minutes, just saying, okay, well, I'll share a little about us as a company and kind of fill in the blanks and how you found out about us and what you may not know, give them a real brief, history and what we've done. And then I'll share, then I'll say, we'll find out about you guys and see how we can maybe make this a match and see how we can help you. And that's normally how I start off the actual, consultations now at this point is, filling in the blanks of what they know about our company, then finding about who they are as a company. I think because if you're starting off a friendship with a client, you're starting off a friendship with anybody, you're going to have a mutual chat back and forth about your experiences and things like that. It's taking it from the hello to getting on friendly terms at that point.
Sure.
And I think what's important to note here, John, and it's something that Mitch and I have talked about before, there is no, when it comes to the sales process, I don't know that there is a set formula that works for everyone. Mm-hmm. A lot of it is what works for you. I mean, there's so much information out there from a variety of sources. Sometimes it's just a matter of, pulling out what little bits and pieces from everyone and making it work to your advantage.
Agreed.
Sure. I have one more question, and then I think that'll be putting us at the end of our time. We've had a great session, guys. Thank you very much for that. But past stories from past clients. We all have the little talking about, this happened at this. How much do you use that in the process? Whether it's sales process, do you use it there or do you not? Do you use it when you're talking about creating an event at this facility? Mitch, what do you, past stories of past clients' experiences? Do you use that?
Yes.
Okay, great, Ron.
No.
I'm not really sure I understand the question.
Using past stories, past examples of maybe an introduction. You did an introduction, specifically the story, like the bride who was that you used the number 4 with, and how you were able to create for her. Do you use a lot of that past stories when you're helping to give them an idea of possibilities?
Oh, absolutely. And probably like Mitch, I use video. I use whatever I can get, to show them, or to tell the story.
Stories sell, in my opinion, especially if it's about something they're considering or a way you can paint the picture better for them of how they will feel and look, and really the whole feeling of their wedding day and the whole picture of their wedding day. Stories sell. And not that every single thing you talk about should be a story. No. Mm-hmm. But I think if you bring up 1 or 2 maybe stories of how you created this for this couple, and it's similar to what you want to do, Miss Bride, this is how we can do this for you. Or like Ron said, also showcase video. If
Sure.
you have video of your performance, it's killer to be able to show that, because let's face it, many DJs have not caught up to that level of interaction with a bride and groom yet and have video footage of their performance. I tell that to all of our couples. You definitely should see video of the person you are choosing ahead of time. They could be a great salesperson, be a really horrible MC or a really bad DJ. So you want to see video footage of them performing in advance. Otherwise, you're handing a live microphone to a complete stranger in front of all your friends and family. Is that a good idea?
Sometimes not so much.
Well, and to just take that one step further, the power of a story is that through story you make emotional connections.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And that emotional connection is what is extremely valuable to you.
Yeah, for sure. On that thought, guys, let's wrap things up. if people would like to ask questions, is it okay if they email you guys?
Absolutely.
Perfect. If you'd like to email, it's Mitch Taylor at discjockeynews.com and Ron Ruth at discjockeynews.com. You can email either of them. Check them out in the Disc Jockey News. Mitch is on page 2. Ron is on page 6 every month. A lot of great information in their articles. A little bit more great information in Ron's article.
The good stuff is buried deeper, right?
That's what he tells us to say.
On your screen here, I can't tell which way is which.
Yeah, right now, the little screen, it's tougher to see. So,
yeah, for Mitch, it's easy. Yeah,
just two either way, he's good to go. Great stuff, guys. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. If you have any questions, you can also put those in the comments below. We'll do our best to answer those in the comments, or we can message you with that right down on the bottom there.
And make sure you see Mitch at the Midwest DJs Live conference coming up real soon, because I've seen him talk, and he knows his stuff.
He does.
If you're not heading to Midwest DJs Live, stop out at Las Vegas DJ Show and stay longer, because Ron Ruth is presenting at the Wedding MBA coming up just after Las Vegas DJ Show in Las Vegas in September.
And I'm not going anywhere.
Cheap plug.
Yeah. Well, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, basically. Actually, we'll be at the Conclave. We'll all be at the Conclave in November. That's what we're going to say.
Oh, God. Yeah, I forgot about that. Got to do the Conclave in November.
We'll be
9th,
all there.
10th, 11th, right?
Yep, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th.
I heard Carr Hagerman is going to be there.
Carr will be there, and we're working on right now getting we're doing our Monday morning keynote, which we're going to announce that person, which both of you have seen and know that one. But we're trying to get a social media for Tuesday morning, a pretty high-end guy on the social media side of it.
Awesome.
So we're really kind of excited about that. But we'll be getting more information
and I bet
about.
Mitch and I will be there too.
You guys will be. That's right.
I'll be in the back row.
Yeah, you might
I'll be
back
sitting next to you.
back row causing trouble. But hey, what's new?
We'll be in the 6th row.
Second seat.
Second seat. On top of each.
Hey now.
Once again, guys, thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome.
This is John Young with the Disc Jockey News with Mitch Taylor and Ron Ruth. Good night.